This title might be more funny if you imagine Jan Brady saying it. That's up to you. So this is It's Always Mary. Mary, Mary, Mary. Or Jesus. Before Mary was the Virgin Mary, she was just a virgin named Mary. She and her family were from a town called Galilee, which I've heard is a lot like Des Moines. In Galilee, Mary had a sister named Mary. And that Mary was also a virgin, but not the Virgin. Mary the Virgin and the Virgin Mary, we can assume, since there's no real record, either apocryphal or divine, that they had a relationship like most siblings. They squabbled, of course, but for the most part they got along. Like any teenage girls, they shared clothes, gossiped, and didn't always display the best judgment relative to their Facebook posts. But there was always something bubbling up under the skin of Mary the Virgin. Even before the Virgin Mary became the Virgin Mary, she was her parents' favorite. When Mary the Virgin one day confronted her parents, Anne and Joachim, when she confronted them about it, they most certainly said, "Of course we don't love the Virgin Mary more than you. Sure, she's perfect, and you aren't. But we love you both the same. We love her for her perfection, and we love you for your faults." So you can imagine how this sat with Mary the Virgin. And I suppose you can imagine the spiteful joy Mary the Virgin had when the Virgin Mary became an unwed teen mother. Little Miss Perfect finally screwed up. And I suppose you can imagine the bitter taste in Mary the Virgin's mouth when it was revealed that the father of the Virgin Mary's child was God. And that the Virgin Mary was technically still a virgin. It's no secret that sibling rivalry was alive and well in biblical times. Think Cain and Abel, and Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. This being the case, we can imagine Mary the Virgin asking her pillow as she sobbed into it, her mascara mixing with tears, creating her own advanced copy of the Shroud of Turin. We can imagine her saying, "Why not me? I'm a virgin. My name is Mary. WTF, G-O-D." And I suppose Mary the Virgin has a point. How much different would the world really be today if God had picked Mary the Virgin instead of the Virgin Mary? Who's to say? And what of Jesus' brothers and sisters? The Bible said he has some. Jesus, in fact, had 4 brothers with apparently very popular names. There was James, Simon, Judas, and Joseph Jr., who went by Joey. Jesus also had sisters, although we don't know how many or what their names were, but we can assume they were all named Mary, and that all were virgins, at least for a time. We can also assume if it was difficult for Mary the Virgin to grow up in the shadow of the Virgin Mary, it must have been considerably more difficult to grow up alongside Jesus. We can imagine garbage night in the house of the Lord. Joseph calls upstairs, "Joey, it's your turn to take the trash out." Joey replies, "I did it last week. It's Jesus' turn." "Really, Joey," Joseph says, "you want the Son of God, who was born to your virgin mother, to take out the trash?" So, what does the story of Joey and the garbage and Mary have to do with Christmas, other than the obvious? I suppose these stories point to the underbelly of the holiday. Christmas isn't really about a virgin who did or didn't technically have sex with whom or what. Don't get me wrong, Jesus is the reason for the season, but Christmas, at least what got it started, it seems, is favoritism. It's about God choosing the Virgin Mary over Mary the Virgin. It's about James, Simon, Judas, Joey, and the Mary's birthdays being a lot less special than Jesus's. During Christmas, we deck the halls with boughs of holly, fa la 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 la, but we sometimes deck them with bitter apples and sour grapes. For Christmas can bring feelings of resentment to a head. With a chip on your shoulder, it's easy to be blind to the pile of presents in front of you and be envious of the pile in front of your brother or sister. Perhaps even counting them. Perhaps even looking at the prices of everything online and tying them up, so as to have a metric by which to gauge your parents' imbalanced affections. And later, hopefully, shove it in their faces when you finally get that big book deal you deserve. Parents always have a favorite. If they say they don't, then they're lying. And if they say they aren't lying, then they're lying about lying, which is so much worse. It's only natural. God had a favorite, and people do too. As I'm sure you figured out, my parents had a favorite, and it was not me. Apparently, I screamed too loudly when I was being picked on, or when I was getting the crap beat out of me. I don't know if it was the volume or the octave at which I screamed, but whatever it was, my parents hated it. But both of these stories tonight that were edited out of the Bible have a moral that goes deeper than the pain, resentment, and eventual sarcasm that develops as a result of parents' favoritism. It points to one of the forgotten takeaways of Christmas, and it is this: regardless of how hard it might be to grow up in the shadow of a brother or sister who is perfect, or how mean your phenomenally imperfect brother or sister might have been to you growing up, or if you happen to be 34 and you still get picked on, if you still get wet willies, wedgies, get a burp blown into your face, or a bystander to crop duster farting, or gleeking, regardless of all that, Christmas is the one day of the year we should pause and reflect on the idea that no matter how bad it was, it could have been a lot worse. This is what I do. On this one day, Christmas, I look past my parents' misplaced favoritism and forget about all the awful things my brother has done to me, and take solace in the fact that at least he wasn't the offspring of a god. That would have been a lot worse.